It's our first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive into us in the next half an hour. We'll see what's making the headlines with Chief Leader Writer for The Observer, Sonia Sodha, and the News Editor at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Kate Andrews. So let's take a look at some of those front pages, and we start with the Labour Party warning that Britain's train carriages will be crowded to more than 200% of their capacity in 3 years' time. That's the lead story in the Metro. The Telegraph reports on the migrant crossings in Kent with a call from the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, for the Navy to help save lives in the Channel. Brexit is back in the news, with The Guardian going with Jeremy Corbyn's hesitance to back a second referendum. That's despite calls from his party to do so. And staying with Brexit, the Brexit Secretary, Stephen Barclay, has written in the Daily Express, telling readers to brace themselves for a no-deal Brexit should we leave without an agreement in March. The Eye features a new breath test that could detect cancer on their front page. And the Daily Mail goes with the same story, saying it's set to revolutionise diagnosis of cancer. University funding, that's on the front of the Times, warning that borrowing by universities has topped £10 billion in a race to attract students. According to the FT, slowing sales and an expected price cut suggest a difficult year could be on the horizon for Tesla, the electric car maker. The Mirror has an interview with the Scottish comedian Billy Connolly, who says he's not scared of his life slipping away despite having Parkinson's disease. And cold weather is on the front of the Daily Star with a warning that icy winds will spark a health warning as temperatures of -10 are set to hit the country. Not weather for a bikini, is it? And tonight I'm joined by Sonia Sodha and Kate Andrews. Hello again, nice to see you both. Now, we've all had a little bit of a break, haven't we, from Brexit over Christmas and the New Year. We've all been able to sit back, pause, reflect, but it's very much back in the news.
Back on, yeah.
Tell me about this story in the Daily Telegraph. This is Davis says May should delay Brexit deal vote. That's the headline.
So this is the former Brexit Secretary David Davis now saying that May should further delay the meaningful vote on the Brexit deal that she's brought back from Brussels. Well,
again?
Not only would it be for the second time, but this is a very different attitude that the Eurosceptics had to before Christmas. Before Christmas, there was absolute outrage that she had delayed the meaningful vote. The thought was she couldn't get her political views through Parliament, and postponing it was delaying the inevitable, delaying the opportunity to get a better deal. But they put in their 48 letters, more possibly, we don't know how many. They had that vote, and the Prime Minister won. She retained the confidence of her party. And so now they can't force a different Brexit through. David Davis is putting forward a very different game, saying actually delay the vote, make the EU very fearful that they're going to lose that £39 billion payoff, and push them into giving us a better deal. Now, in a strange way, despite being very far away from Mrs May on the political spectrum of Brexit, this is a bit of her own tactic too. The longer I can wait to get this deal through, potentially more MPs will come on board because they don't want to risk a no-deal Brexit. It says here that that very soon, I think next week it says, she'll be inviting every Tory MP to parties where she can chat to them about her deal and still try to bring them on board. So everyone's kicking the can down the road. And my question is, how much further along do you think you can kick it? Because the the UK is leaving the EU at the end of March, and that is now weeks away, not years. Not many months, it's weeks away.
You can imagine Theresa May encouraging the wine to keep pouring the wine, keep pouring the wine.
Yeah, and I think it's a good deal.
The public aren't going to stomach this, are they?
Well, I think the public, absolutely one thing, but MPs is another. So lots of MPs were absolutely furious when May delayed the vote back in December. And even to delay it to the week commencing 14th of January, which is when it was meant to be now, was seen as really kind of a bit beyond the pale. So you can see the strategy that is being played. It's a game of chicken, who will blink first. May is playing it in both directions, both with the EU. She wants to hold out as long as possible in the hope that they will blink first in order to avoid a no-deal scenario. and with MPs over here. She's hoping that she will be able to bring both Brexity and, potentially even MPs who wanted to avoid Brexit altogether. She wants people to think it is a choice between her deal or no deal. And she is hoping that that will bring a broader coalition of MPs behind a deal. Now, I agree that from a political perspective, it probably is it's the only way she's going to get her deal through, if she really makes MPs think that it is between her deal and no deal, because we know at the moment there is no parliamentary majority in favour of a deal. The question is what is there a parliamentary majority in favour of? So we're in quite uncharted territory, but I would be very surprised if she delayed again, and I'd be very surprised if MPs let her get away with delaying again. And I think that is something that Number 10 will be bearing in mind. There are all sorts of parliamentary tricks that the opposition, that even some of her own backbench MPs might join in to sort of try and force a vote. So I think we will see a vote by the end of January, one way or the other. And I think it is quite a dangerous game of chicken that she's playing, actually.
And meanwhile, of course, we all have to be prepared for a no deal, and that is the front page of the Express. Brace yourself for a no deal Brexit. Publicity blitz will advise on healthcare and travel.
Yep, so ministers are dramatically coming up to speed in the preparations for a no-deal Brexit. According to the Daily Express, the current Brexit Secretary, Stephen Barclay, has written for the Express on page 4, which we have here, and actually very soberly lays out exactly what the government is trying to do right now to prepare for a no-deal Brexit. Now, some of it might feel very uncomfortable to people, talking about stocking medicine and the deals that it's going to have to arrange with the EU if this were to happen, but it's very forthright. And actually, he seems to very much be playing a role of coming to the public to keep them updated, which many people will appreciate.
Is this aimed at the public, or is this aimed at wavering MPs?
I think it's aimed at wavering MPs. So obviously the government will say, well, we're issuing these warnings, it's very important for businesses and the public. I think lots of people will find this quite scary. I think in some ways it's a bit irresponsible, because we know there's no parliamentary majority in favour of no deal, but it is very much part of the government's game plan to try and get wavering MPs to vote for its deal. And there's an interesting line in Steve Barclay's piece: no deal will be far more likely if MPs reject the PM's Brexit deal later this month. This is all part of that strategy of trying to make MPs think it's between my deal or no deal. And if you don't back my deal, your constituents are going to blame you for some of this chaos. So I think that is all part of Mrs May's game.
Scaremongering, Kate.
Well, no, it is quite political, but I'm not sure it is scaremongering. People have to be aware of the realities of no deal. No deal is not actually no deal. It's lots and lots of little deals that have to be made quickly around medicine and trade and the Irish border and EU rights as citizens' rights and all that. And I don't really know anyone in the policy world who thinks that this is the best option. I'm sure it's aimed at wavering MPs, but we have to remember, with Mrs May pushing a Brexit deal that so many people, especially within her own party and those voters, are rejecting, a lot of people have come round to the idea of no deal simply as being the only option to get the Brexit that they think that they voted for. I think it's very helpful for Stephen Barclay to lay out some of those realities and to be planning for it. I mean, this should have been happening 2.5 years ago, frankly. Maybe not to the same extent that it's happening now, but they are having to speed up preparations for no deal because they acted like it wasn't a reality. Well, you have a prime minister pushing the vote along, you have MPs that don't have any parliamentary majority. It is a possibility.
We know the Prime Minister has been speaking over the Christmas and New Year period to many of the European leaders, trying to get some sort of concession. We've had very little word that any concession has been made. I mean, are you expecting any sort of great announcement in the next few days?
I'm not expecting anything substantial. So what she may potentially get is something fairly cosmetic. But I think
over the backstop.
Over the backstop, yeah. But I'm not sure that anything. I mean, I think the very difficult thing about this is that any concession from the EU would have to be substantial enough to convince people like Kate over here, like very, like Brexit supporting MPs. Now, the tricky thing about this is that the EU has been clear that there has to be an insurance arrangement to guarantee that there will be no hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And this is really the conundrum that was always going to make Brexit very, very difficult. The Good Friday Agreement is contingent on the UK being a member of the customs union and the single market. It was always going to be difficult to make that work. So I'm sceptical. Ireland is holding very firm on this. I'm sceptical that we're going to see a substantial concession that will be substantial enough to win over MPs. MPs. I think May is relying much more on it being a case between, choice between pretty much her deal, maybe with a couple of cosmetic changes, and no deal.
OK, we've covered a delayed Brexit, we've covered a no-deal Brexit, we've covered May's Brexit. We've got 1 minute to cover a referendum on Brexit, a second referendum. This is in The Guardian, Jeremy Corbyn defying Labour calls for one.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. So in many ways, there's not much that's surprising about this story, because it is Jeremy Corbyn sticking hard and fast to official Labour policy, which is to say we're not going to back a second referendum until later on down the line, until there's been a vote of confidence in the government. Now, this essentially is Labour playing its own game of chicken, its own blinking game. It wants to hold its position, which is basically a complete fudge, I think incredibly irresponsible, for as long as possible. It wants all the heat to be on Theresa May. But I think in the end, Labour is going to have to move before Theresa May, because if they don't, it will come down to a choice between Theresa May's deal and no deal. They will have left it too late. So I think it's increasingly looking untenable for Jeremy Corbyn to hold to this quite cowardly line on Brexit, I think.
I think Sonia's completely right about the politics of it, but if we want to speak to Jeremy Corbyn as a politician, he's many things that people like me on certain policies very much disagree with, but he has held to certain principles throughout his lifetime. He believes very strongly in democracy and people voting and that being delivered.
Not democracy in his own party, though, because, the bulk of Labour members are in favour of a second referendum.
Well, that's a good point, but if there were a second referendum and the UK voted to remain at that time, many people would see that as undermining the original vote, and I don't think Corbyn wants to get caught up in that debate.
You can read plenty more on the front page of The Guardian. Maybe the Pope's got the answer. Who knows? Thank you both for the moment.
Only,
coming up,
someone had the answer.
5 years old, too young to learn first aid. We're going to discuss that when we come back after this short break.